We talk so much about fixing the world, climate change, inequality, food injustice, conflict. But what I've learned from experience is that we can't heal the world outside of us until we start going inward to heal ourselves. Hi, I'm Diane Hatz, founder of the Hearth Network. Today, I want to share why personal healing isn't selfish, it's essential. Because until we look inside and face our own wounds, we'll keep recreating the same patterns in the world around us. In psychology, it's called projection and transference. For years, I pushed myself nonstop with my activism and work, thinking if I fought harder and worked more, I could help save the world and find personal happiness while doing it. Ugh, was I wrong? It took a long time, but I eventually realized that I was carrying a past and pain I didn't want to acknowledge. I was doing my best in therapy to heal, but I kept throwing myself on other people, and I didn't understand that they were mainly a reflection of what I had going on inside of me. I eventually understood that they were doing the same to me, those other people. I think that offices and jobs and companies are petri dishes for unresolved trauma and issues. They're a place where people fling their unresolved stuff onto other people. When someone acts out on me now, I step back and I understand they're acting out something from their past. It doesn't mean I let it slide like I used to, but I'm learning to have compassion for other people's stuff and not to take it personally and to set healthy boundaries so I'm not triggered with my stuff. For example, I worked at a nonprofit where the president was a peace and anti-nuclear activist. Peace was what she worked toward, but she was the angriest person I'd ever met. She spent all day in the office smoking cigarettes and yelling at me. Having bosses that yell at me has been a long running theme in my career. Also, I helped build this nonprofit in New York City. It was me and the president to start, and I was able to help shape the direction and to build the organization. Of course, I never got any credit, nor did I get any credit for all the success I had. Fast forward a few years. As the organization became more successful, more people were hired. Someone, let's call her Susie, was hired to help with my projects. I found out too late that she was spreading vicious lies about me, and she turned the entire office against me. She even got the person above me on her side. What happened over the course of a couple years was that I was systematically destroyed. My work was taken from me with no explanation and was eventually torn apart while I felt brutalized. Everything I'd done was erased, or I was erased from it. Look, I was no angel and I had no skill at managing, so I'm not saying I was perfect. But what got me was that we worked on humane treatment of animals, so I guess the human was taken out of humane. The staff literally ghosted me. I'd walk down the hall and people would literally look through me. Susie ended up in federal prison while working under me. No one told me officially what was happening, but they held her job for her while she was incarcerated. When she got out, she was given all my work and promoted into my position. I was kicked out of the organization. I did leave with a healthy grant because the funder was an amazing woman, but every time I started a project, it was ripped from me, or I was told not to do it. I could count off many instances where my work was sabotaged or destroyed, but the final straw was when I spent about a year and a half on a food waste campaign called End Food Waste Now. I even got to speak at a TED event called TED Active about it. I launched the program, and within 2 weeks, the person I reported to called me up and told me to shut everything down and send it to him. There was no explanation. And I did it. I did it. I ended up losing my grant, my career, and nearly my sanity. I was absolutely destroyed. So why am I sharing this? To be honest, one reason is because I've stayed silent for over 10 years about all the injustices I went through, and this is part of my healing process. The other is because I didn't know how to stand up and fight for my work back then, and I ended up blaming and shaming myself for years because I didn't defend or protect myself. It took over a decade for me to understand that I never learned the skills to stand up to bullies because I'd been bullied and beaten as a child, and I was never able to advocate for myself. I was silenced at a young age and continued to silence myself for decades. It took a long time for me to understand that I had repeated my past, that however the universe and our brains work, I had recreated the trauma I had gone through earlier in my life. It's called repetition compulsion. I was also blaming the world and other people for what happened and for being treated so horribly. This pattern has repeated my entire life. So I eventually realized the common denominator in all the pain I'd gone through was me. I didn't ask for what happened to me when I was a child, but it left imprints in my brain that led me to recreate the trauma and abuse over and over again throughout my life. So I was the only one who was abusing myself because I didn't know how to set boundaries around toxic people and fight for what was mine. This was such a painful lesson, and it took years for me to climb out of the hell I'd fallen into. And trust me, I still have bad days. I mean, I broke. And what was hardest for me at the time was that almost everyone I worked with, everyone I'd gone out of my way over the years to help, they all turned their back. I was still that child looking for someone to save me and fight my battles for me. Now, with time and a lot of healing under my belt, I see some good that's come out of my hell, and I've learned so much about things that really matter. I'm still working through my shame and self-blame, but I'm not pointing fingers at anyone anymore. Well, some days I might want to, but I've made huge progress. I'm focused on going inward and changing patterns that were ingrained in me. It hurts because I'm still in the process of grieving what could have happened but didn't. Today, I'm headed in the right direction for the first time in my life, but that doesn't change the fact that I lost a lot of things. And stuffing my feelings down only makes things worse. So I'm developing a grieving practice for what I didn't get so that I can make space for all the wonderful things coming my way. I can't remember exactly what triggered the realization, but one day I sat up and I understood. I was trying to solve my problems by pushing out rather than going inward. I believed that other people were the problem. And don't get me wrong, horrible things were done to me, and those people are responsible for their actions. But they were a reflection of the turmoil going on inside myself. I attracted them because it's what I knew. If you think you can shove down your pain and hide it forever, I'm here to tell you that you can't. It'll come out in some way. It can manifest in anger, hatred, screwing over other people, eating disorders, addictions, and on and on. Look around at the world today, especially here in the US. We have serious problems, and they root from damaged people acting out their trauma on others. All of a sudden, it was obvious. We won't solve any of the world's problems, not climate change, food injustice, conflict, and on, until we start healing from the inside out. How can people ever work together toward a common goal when they're lost in projections from their past and keep acting out? Will everyone start working on themselves and healing? Of course not. But if enough people start the hard, challenging, and painful work of finding their authentic selves, we can create a force and a powerful energy that can start to turn the tide against all the hatred, abuse, and trauma being inflicted globally. I'll continue this in another video, so I think that's enough for today. Thanks for being here. If this resonates, I'd love for you to subscribe and join me for weekly conversations on healing, authenticity, and creativity. Thank you so much.